Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining online and also in person. Great to see everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join for our preparing your home and kitchen for Pesach the easy way. We know that always Pesach and the days leading up and the weeks leading up to Pesach bring anxiety and stress and even dread. For a lot of people, Pesach is a story of going from the slavery of Egypt to slavery in the kitchen, preparing for the holiday. And there's certainly a lot of work that goes into Chag, but what we're going to try to do in this workshop, and so glad that you joined, is to try to follow the principle of knowledge is power, that the more that you know about what's necessary and what the principles are behind everything we're doing, I think it'll make us better equipped to prepare for the holiday and also ease some of the stress. Also, there are many things that people do and they're strict in areas that are really not required. And so we'll try to explain exactly what's necessary and what is not necessary. As you all know, with Pesach, generally speaking, there's a war against chametz. We try to eliminate chametz, bread, crackers, all leavened products from our home for the holiday of Pesach, the time of our freedom. And part of the reason is because by eating matzah, which is the mitzvah at the Seder, by eating matzah and by avoiding chametz, we're reenacting the experience of the Jews when they came out of Egypt. When they came out of Egypt, well, firstly, they ate matzah as a food of slavery. And then that matzah was transformed from a food of slavery into a food of redemption, because when they came out of Egypt, as you all know, so the redemption was so quick that they weren't able to bake their dough into chametz. And so when we eat matzah and avoid chametz, that's reenacting the experience of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Secondly, matzah connotes humility, while chametz perhaps is the notion of it's puffed up, and so it's kind of associated with haughtiness and arrogance, which is of course something we try to avoid on Pesach and all year long as well. And finally, another idea is that matzah is kind of the first stage of the baking process, and it reminds us that Pesach is really the first stage of the process of the redemption that really culminates with the receiving of the Torah on Shavuot. The first day we celebrate freedom of Pesach, but already the second night we start counting Shiur to Omer, which is climbing the mountain. We start climbing the mountain and connecting the freedom of Pesach, the freedom from Mitzrayim, with the aspiration to have a mission as a people, as individuals, with the receiving of the Torah. So matzah is the idea of the beginning of the process. And we stop it there at Pesach. And then over the course of time, that's when the process culminates with chametz, with the shtei halechem, with the two breads that are offered on the holiday of Shavuot. Those are just a few ideas about, in terms of why we have this kind of war, so to speak, against chametz on Pesach. But to kind of go down to the essence, there are really two basic prohibitions when it comes to Pesach. The first is that you're not allowed to eat chametz or any products that have chametz in them. This is based on the pasuk, lo yeachel chametz, right? That you're not allowed to eat chametz. The second basic prohibition is called by the rabbis as bal yira, bal yimatzeh. This is really based on two psukim. One pasuk is shivad yamim seor lo yimatzeh bevatechem, that you shouldn't find leaven or leaven products in your house for the 7 days, 8 days in the diaspora. And the other pasuk is in Parshat Re'eh, in Sefer Dvarim, where it says, Lo yera'eh lecha seor. So that's bal yera'eh, bal yimatzeh. It's based on one pasuk that says Lo yera'eh, and one pasuk says Lo yimatzeh. It shouldn't be seen, it shouldn't be found in your possession, any leaven products, any bread, any chametz items. Bread, crackers, cookies, pasta, all the different types of chametz that we avoid. And really, the prohibition, it's important to understand, the prohibition is not to see or find chametz. The prohibition is really to own, to be in ownership of the chametz over the course of Pesach. All right. So one prohibition is to eat the chametz, and there's another prohibition that you're not bal yarah bal yamatzeh, which is a double prohibition, but it's the basic prohibition of not being in ownership of chametz over the course of Pesach. Now, it's interesting that with most foods, with most non-kosher foods, that is, there's just a prohibition to eat the food. With regards to meat and milk mixtures, so then the prohibition is not just achila, but also hana. You're not allowed to eat it, and you're also not allowed to benefit from a meat and milk mixture. You're also not allowed to cook meat and milk together. However, with chametz, here we go even further. That chametz is prohibited. It's not only prohibited to eat chametz, and it's not only prohibited to benefit, right, to enjoy, to benefit, to smell. If you're walking around the streets, you walk past the bakery, you should be careful not to smell chametz on Pesach. That not only is it prohibited to eat or to benefit from, but it's even prohibited to own the chametz. And so what is it about chametz that led the Torah to make a prohibition of bal yarah bal yamatzeh, which is, that it's not only right that you can't even own the chametz. The Ran, Rabbeinu Nisim from Spain, of Gerona, he gives two explanations. He says that with most non-kosher foods, it's prohibited all year long. With chametz, it's permitted all year, and you're accustomed to eating it. And so the Torah needs to make a more stringent prohibition to make sure that we're going to be compliant to not have the chametz over the course of Pesach, because it's permitted all year long. The second reason he gives is that chametz seems to be a more stringent prohibition than other non-kosher foods. And this is evidence from the fact that eating chametz on Pesach is a prohibition, is a punishment of karet, kind of being cut off from the people. So the Ran gives those two explanations to understand as to why the Torah really, goes crazy here and says you can't eat, you can't benefit, and you can't even be in ownership of chametz. So this is with this foundation, why must you clean your home for Pesach? And there's three different reasons. One reason why you have to clean your home is because you can't own chametz. The second reason is because if chametz is lying around in the house, you might come and by accident eat the chametz. And number three is that there's also another mitzvah to be aware of, which is called tashbitu, which is that you're supposed to, it's a positive commandment on the day before Pesach to eliminate chametz, to burn the chametz, right? And that's why we go ahead and we burn at least a portion of chametz. We're also supposed to clean our homes to reach a state so that tashbitu, so that the home is clear of chametz on Erev Pesach. With that foundation, introduction in terms of the prohibitions and the basic ideas that maybe is obvious to most of you in terms of why you have to clean your house. So how do we prepare our homes? The good news is that you don't need to rip out your carpeting. You don't need to replace the floor tiles. You don't need to blowtorch the curtains. You don't need to repaint the house. You don't need to do these different things. And so that's the good news. And there's another piece of good news, which is that the halacha, the law gives us a number of tools in the toolbox and a number of weapons in the arsenal to be able to defeat the chametz, to eliminate the chametz effectively from our homes. And so here's what you need to do to clean your home from chametz. Yes, the first thing is that the traditional route of cleaning your home from the chametz, and that's what eventually leads to the bedika chametz that you do on the night before Pesach, which this year is Tuesday night in less than 2 weeks. Sorry, and so we do the bedika chametz on Tuesday night, and then we burn the chametz the next morning. You need to clean your home and get it ready for that stage. To do this, you should. It's really like you would do during the course of the year, at various times, whether you do it each week, twice a week, every day. I don't know how often you clean your home with the basic elements, right? You sweep the floor and you vacuum any carpeting. If you're blessed to have a family member or a housekeeper to do these kinds of chores, then of course, take advantage of that. We're trying to make things easy for you. That's just have somebody or if you need to do it, sweep the floors, vacuum the carpets. Then you have a number of other things that you should do in the days leading up to Pesach. You should check the desk drawers quickly, check the pockets of your jackets and coats. It's been with the bad weather, and it's raining now. With the bad weather, we've been wearing our jackets and coats more often in recent days. So you might have put a Twix bar in there. You might have put you might have put a granola bar in there. So you want to check the pockets of your jackets and coats. You want to give a quick look through your gym backpack, right? Your backpack and your purses, and then maybe a quick check of the couch cushions. Okay, you don't need to use any screwdrivers to undo the chairs and to take apart your desks and things of that nature. All you have to do is give a quick check in the couch, behind the cushions, to make sure that there's no Cheerios or major pieces of chocolate bars or crumbs that are in those places. The halacha is that anywhere that bread or cookies or chametz could possibly be brought, that's really where you should check. If it's a place where chametz is never brought, like a bathroom, so then there's no need to check the bathroom, to check that place. If you have children, if you're blessed to have children in the home, or if you're blessed to have grandchildren who are running around your home from time to time, all right, so that makes it a little more challenging, because then they might bring the chametz to other areas and far-flung areas in the house. And use your discretion, be reasonable. The children should be asked to check their backpack and to check their desks. But either way, make sure don't go overboard. If you don't bring chametz there, there's no need to check that area. That's the first traditional approach that we have to cleaning the house. The second very important mechanism is what's called bittul, and that's the nullification of the crumbs and chametz that's in your home. Yes, you try to take the regular approach of clearing out your house and the areas that you're going to be using over Pesach. However, then there's something that we do right after the bedika on the night before Pesach. We repeat it again the morning before Pesach, and that's the kol chamira v'chamiyah. There's a debate between the Rishonim, between Rashi and Tosfot. How does this nullification of chametz work, and how does it achieve success in getting rid of the problem? Rashi says that because the Torah doesn't say lo tavaru, the Torah doesn't say that you should burn the chametz. It says tashpitu, you should destroy it. And so if you mentally, intellectually nullify it, and certainly if you articulate the nullification of the chametz, you're in fulfillment of the mitzvah of eliminating the chametz. Technically, you could have relied on that for everything. However, that's we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket to nullify all the chametz in your home. And secondly, you can nullify the chametz in your home, but if there's chametz lying around and there's stuff that's accessible, then you might come and eat that over the course of Pesach. So we're not going to just rely on the bittul, on the nullification. But this is a very significant mechanism that we use. According to Rashi, it fulfills the mitzvah of tashbitu. According to Tosfot, he says, no, don't get carried away. This mechanism of nullifying that we do twice, of nullifying any chametz that we may or may not know about on the night before, we do it on the chametz that we don't know about. On the morning of, which is the final nullification, we do whether we know about it, whether we don't know about it, we nullify any chametz. Tosfot says that the way it works is that it makes it ownerless. So it's a workaround. You don't have to worry about the crumbs or those things that you nullify because it's no longer in your possession. We incorporate both positions of Rashi and Tosfot in our bittul. We say kol chamir v'chami, etc. Lahave hefker ki afra diara. It should be ownerless, like dust of the earth. This is in fulfillment of a Tosfot, in that we make it ownerless, and ki afra diara, we make it like the dust of the earth, like Rashi, in that we kind of mentally destroy and say, this is worthless to me, this is nothing, I don't care about. For this reason, you could rely on bittul for any crumbs in your home. Yes, if it's in the main area, of course, you make sure that area is swept, and you check your cushions. But beyond that, the Torah wasn't given to angels. The Torah was given to us as human beings. And we have limited capacities. We can't check and find every single crumb that's in our home, and we shouldn't be nervous about it, whether it's in the home or also the crumbs in your car. What you do is crumbs which are inaccessible, you don't have to worry about it. Don't worry about it. And you don't have to do a spring cleaning of every different corner and nook and cranny of your home. Do the basic steps that I mentioned earlier, and then you rely on the bittul to cover everything else. Bittul works, it's effective, and that takes care of all the crumbs that you weren't able to clean or you weren't able to find. The third mechanism that we employ is mechirat chametz. And here, the custom, it's a widespread custom to sell chametz that you set aside, that you designate, that you put into cabinets, that you sell it to a non-Jew. Right? You appoint the rabbi. I'd be honored to do it for you again. Right? You appoint a rabbi to be an agent for you. You're not selling the chametz to the rabbi, but you're appointing the rabbi to be your shliach, to be your agent, to sell your chametz to the non-Jew, and he's going to arrange the sale. And it's a complete and legitimate sale that we do. There are those who are stringent not to sell full chametz products. Okay, there are those that don't sell bread and crackers and pasta and these things. They make sure they think about it weeks in advance, and they make sure that they eat all their bread and they only buy one box of pasta when it's a couple weeks left to Pesach. Our family is stringent, like Rav Soloveitchik felt, and there are those who felt to not sell regular chametz. Personally, we don't rely on the chiras chametz for full-fledged chametz products. We do rely on it for whiskey, and that's one of the original reasons for mechiras chametz, because of Jews that were in the whiskey liquor business, and it was just impractical and it would be untenable for them to throw out and get rid of all their whiskey in their warehouses. But in any case, so there are those who are stringent to only sell, let's say, whiskey, if you view that as not chametz gamor, not complete chametz. And number two, to sell products that maybe have a little bit of chametz in the products. Having said that, the vast majority and the widespread custom is to rely on mechirat chametz for everything. Even if you have a full-fledged challah and you have Dave's killer bread and whatever it is, that it's legitimate to, what you do is you put it into if it's pasta, things that could be put into a cabinet, and you tape up the cabinet. If it must be in the freezer, then it's totally closed off. That shelf is totally lined off and tinfoiled off to make sure that nobody gets to it. But I'm not so comfortable with items remaining in the fridge or freezer that are actual chametz. I prefer and recommend you keeping the fridge and freezer totally clear of chametz. But in terms of having a pantry with a shelf of chametz, in terms of a cabinet or in the garage or in those areas, the vast majority follow the common minhag, which is that you could rely on mechirat chametz to appoint the rabbi, and certainly I'm going to do this for everyone, to sell everyone's chametz, no matter whatever it is, to the non-Jew. It once happened that the non-Jew came to Rav Chaim Soloveitchik over Pesach and said, "Hey, I want my whiskey, I want my bread," and Rav Chaim wasn't upset. He actually was very happy, because he wanted to show the members of his community that it's a real sale to the non-Jew, and the non-Jew does have the ability, he is entitled to come and partake and take from his chametz if he were to desire. Those are the different steps of koshering your home for Pesach. Yes, it's not, and I'm not getting into the preparing of the meals for Pesach, and I know there's a lot that goes into preparing the holiday and a lot of work, so I'm not minimizing that. But in terms of koshering the home, those are the steps that you need to take. Okay, and it's clearing away chametz from the house in a reasonable fashion. Don't go overboard. Don't get carried away. It's nullifying the crumbs through the process of bittul, and then you put other chametz objects into a cabinet, you tape it up, and you include it in your mechirat chametz, in your sale of chametz. if you're going away for the whole Pesach, so then there are those who say, okay, you could sell your whole house, you can sell your whole apartment through Mechiras Chametz with the rabbi. You would still need to do Bedikas Chametz where you're going for Pesach. But I like if, even if you're going away for the whole Pesach, on the night before you leave, you should do Bedikas Chametz, at least for part of your home. A big section of your home or apartment you could include in the Mechiras Chametz. And so if you're going away for Pesach, it's certainly easier to kasher the home. So there should be an area of the home that you still make sure that it's clean of chametz, and that you do bedikas chametz the night before you leave on vacation, or that you leave for Pesach. If it's the night before Pesach that you're home, then you say it with a bracha. If it's a previous night, let's say if the last night that you're home is Sunday night or Monday night, so you do the bedikas chametz of at least part of your home, but you do it without a blessing. If you have any question about those details, let me know. But that's kashering the home for Pesach. Let's now move from the home into the kitchen. All right, we're warming up and we're relaxing a little bit. We're gaining a little bit. We're reminded about some of the principles and trying to reassure you that yes, you can do it. You have what it takes, and don't get carried away. Although when you do get carried away, you get reward for everything you're doing, and maybe we'll spin back to that at the end in terms of to try to have a positive perspective about all the preparation that you're putting into it, because there's religious value in the preparation, and that's part of the mitzvah. But I think it's better to make it easier. Let's try to remain b'simcha, to serve Hashem with simcha, and not get involved in things that end up detracting from the experience. Let's now move from the house into the kitchen with your permission, but maybe, let me pause for a moment to see if anyone has any questions. The rain has basically kept almost everyone away, but good to see the couple who are here, but nice to see you all online. If you have any questions. Okay, Debbie, I'm going to get to your question in just a couple of minutes.
Can you talk about bittul and bedicha? Bittul when you do the feather and the candle?
Yes, okay. Beth just asked me to elaborate a bit on the bedika and the bittul. That's right. That's when the feather is just more of a custom. It's used to kind of brush the chametz. The custom is to put out 10 small pieces of bread. Do not put the pieces of bread out with tinfoil. Put the pieces of bread, take a bounty paper towel or whatever paper towel of your choice. You put a little piece of bread that's a half inch by a half inch, perhaps. You put it into the bounty paper towel. Why do I say paper towel? Because then it could just be burned as is. Don't put it into plastic. Don't put it into tinfoil. Put it into a thick paper towel. Have somebody who puts it in 10 different places and maybe writes it down where those 10 places are, because you want to make sure to find those 10 pieces. And the idea is that it's not supposed to be a perfunctory search. You go with a candle. You say a blessing at the beginning, al bir chametz, because that's the concluding culmination of the process. You say a blessing. You do a real, genuine search of your home, and you use a candle. And I recommend using a flashlight or 2 or 3 to assist with your candle. Be careful when you go around with the candle. You find that bread. That bread is put into a paper bag, and then also anything that's remaining on the morning prior to Pesach, maybe the last Cheerios and the last granola bar or 2, you put it in there without the plastic, and then that's what is burned, or you give to somebody to burn for you on the morning, before 5 hours of the morning. And we stop eating chametz already after, in the morning prior to Pesach. Let's now move. Thank you, Beth, for that question. Let's now move from the house into the kitchen. Now, with regards to the kitchen, the first thing is that you want to make sure, obviously, that all the products that you purchase for Pesach are kosher lePesach. A good idea is to go to one of the kosher markets. Still, you should check to make sure that it has a kosher for Pesach supervision, and that's the obvious first step. The second thing is, by the way, we discussed this last night, that the very first law of the laws of Pesach is to make sure that the poor and needy have sufficient funds to cover all the expenses for the holiday. So as we try to prepare for our holiday, it's important. It's called Ma'ot Chitim. which is originally was actually giving the flour or the wheat to the poor to be able to bake matzot. Nowadays, what it means is to give them the funds necessary so that that they could buy matzah. Matzah is called poor man's bread because it can make you poor at $30, $40, even $50 a pound. And so you should give the money to those who need it, support to anyone who needs it to be able to purchase, of course, the matzah, the wine, and all the different expenses for Pesach. Story is told about the woman who came to Rav Chaim Soloveitchik a few days before Pesach, and she said, can you fulfill the mitzvah of the 4 cups on Pesach night with milk? Some of the students were debating, can you fulfill it with milk? And obviously that causes complications of needed milk if you have meat at the Seder. But anyway, and Rav Chaim, what did he do? He went to the back, he got a bottle of wine, and he gave it to the woman. He explained to his students, if she's asking a question, whether you can fulfill it with milk is because she probably doesn't have the money to buy wine for the 4 cups, and that's really what she needs. Okay, so the first thing is that the foods needs to be kosher for Pesach. Okay, Jerry had one question here. If the male of the house cannot climb to the second level of the home for B'dikat Chametz, is it okay to not go upstairs? We do not believe any food has been there. Okay, so if nobody brings food up there all year long, so then you don't have to go up there. If you have brought food up there, or if you have any members of your family who've sometimes gone up there with food, then you should send somebody up there at some point to scout around and make sure that things are in order. Back into the kitchen. So the first thing is that the foods, of course, need to be kosher for Pesach. The second thing is that your pots, pans, silverware, dishes all need to be, of course, kosher for Pesach. If you have kosher for Pesach utensils and silverware and pots, that's wonderful. And I imagine many of you, to one degree or another, have your kosher for Pesach the dishes and glasses and appliances or whatever it is. To the degree that you have that, Shalom Al Yisrael, that of course is wonderful. But we're going to talk about what happens if you have a pot or a pan or silverware or dishes that are used all year long, or that they have been used at some point during the year. And the question is, how do we make that kosher for Pesach? And the third thing, of course, is appliances. I'm not going to really get too much into medicines and cosmetics and things of that nature. Perhaps we'll touch on that. So the basic law when it comes to koshering is called Kabolo Kach Polto. Kabolo Kach Polto, which means that the way an appliance or the way a pot or the way a fork or a knife, the way it absorbed the foreign taste, Kabolo Kach Polto, that's the way to extract it. In the context when the Jewish people fought against Midian, so they were able to acquire a lot of booty and money, and also pots and pans and things of that nature. And the Torah says, that anything that was used by fire should be kashered through fire. And anything anything that wasn't brought through fire, taviru b'mayim, you should bring it through water. And the rabbis derive from those verses the following concept, of kabolo kach polto, the way it absorbs the taste, that's the way it's extracted. This is whether it's a non-kosher taste or a chametz taste, which of course is non-kosher in the context of Pesach. So if a pan or a grill is used for food without the medium of water, right? It's used with fire. Let's say it's a grill. Then this item, for it to be kashered, it needs to be touched and go through the medium of fire to be kashered. This is called libun, where it's you apply red hot heat or a fire or a blowtorch to the item to kasher it. That's called libun, and that's the first approach of koshering, which is actually quite difficult, and you have to be careful when you do that. If a pot or a pan is used for food with the medium of water, right? Then it requires what's called not libun, but what's called hagala. Hagala means that you use boiling water to kasher the pot or the silverware or whatever the item might be. And we'll talk more about how you kasher with boiling water. That's the general approach, the general method of kashering is through hagala, through boiling water. The third kind of kashering is if you have a countertop or a sink where it wasn't placed in the oven, you didn't cook on that surface, and it wasn't you didn't cook with water, without water on that surface, but it's just that that chametz fell on it over the course of the weeks, over the course of the months. And so therefore, if a countertop or sink is poured upon where the chametz fell upon it, so the way to remove the chametz taste is to pour boiling water on the surface of the sink or the countertop. Those are the three basic forms of kashering. One is called libun, through fire. One is called hagala, through boiling water. And the third is called iru rotchin, which is the pouring of boiling water. And we're going to come back to explaining how each one works and how that applies to a hot water urn and how it applies to other different things. Thanks, Sharon, for that question. There are only certain materials that can be kashered. All metals can be kashered. Smooth wood utensils can be kashered. Granite or marble countertops can be kashered. All those things can be kashered. With regards to glass, so then it's recommended to have new glasses for Pesach. I'm not talking about reading glasses, I'm talking about glasses that you use for food, right? It's recommended to have new glasses for Pesach. And if a glass is used for hot, certainly during the course of the year, certainly the custom of Ashkenazic customs, Sfardim might be a little more lenient, but certainly the Ashkenazic custom is that it cannot be kashered. And so I really recommend, I think it's recommended across the board to have new glasses, new drinking glasses and glass items for Pesach. Plastic, Rav Moshe Feinstein says best to be stringent when it comes to plastic. However, Rabbi Gedalia Dov Schwartz, and I heard the psak from Rabbi Neuberger of Teaneck, where he said that you are allowed to kasher plastic as well. So the following items are allowed to be kashered: metal, smooth wood, granite or marble, and plastic. I believe you can rely on those opinions to say that you can kasher those things. The following things cannot be kashered: porcelain, earthenware, china should not be kashered. And so here you have, it's a stringency by kashering that these things, the china cannot be kashered. So if, let's say, china becomes not kosher at some point, generally speaking, you have to throw it out. If it's a very expensive item, or if it's a family heirloom, or let's say it's a Baal Tshuva and they have a whole set of china, then speak to me. There could be a way to kasher it if you wait a year and you do it 3 times, but that's really that's an extenuating circumstances where you could maybe do a kashering for china. But in general, we do not kasher china. That's a stringency when it comes to China. However, I'm not talking about the country of China. We're not getting into geopolitics here. We're talking about earthenware in China. So that's the stringency. The leniency by China is that you don't need to bring it to the mikvah. You don't need to tovel it. So that gives me, just parenthetically, but it's important, when you buy new items for Pesach or any time of the year. So if it's metal or glass, then it must be toveled. Okay? And if it's a non-kosher item, you need to kasher it first, and then you need to bring it to the mikvah. If it's a new item, so there's no non-kosher taste in the item, it's a new item, but it was manufactured by a non-Jew, so then you need to kind of convert the item. If it's from a non-Jew, you need to convert it, and the conversion, so to speak, is done by immersing it in a mikvah. that's something important to do. So when it comes to china or earthenware utensils, mugs, the stringency is that if it becomes not kosher, you can't kosher it. The leniency is that you do not need to tovel. You don't need to bring that to the mikveh. When a couple get married, mazel tov, and they get their whole big china set, they do not need to bring that to the mikveh. They can use it as is. Now, with regards to Duralex, Pyrex, Corel, Corningware, these are questionable, and I suggest that these not be koshered. Now that we know the different materials that can be koshered, and we also know some of the basic principles and the three the types of koshering, let's get into the different steps of koshering. And right now I'm going to focus now on Hagala, which is koshering through boiling water. One important rule in kashrut is called notein tam l'shvach, notein tam l'fgam. And what that means is that for a taste, if it's a food and it's edible, so then that's going to be something you have to deal with. If it's chametz, it's chametz. If it's not kosher, it creates its own problems, of course. But if it's a taste, my friends, if it's a taste in the walls of the pot, so then it's only going to be a problem if it's in the first 24 hours. After 24 hours, that taste is no longer a positive, productive taste. If you have a non-kosher pot, okay, it doesn't mean that after 24 hours it's fine. But it just means that, let's say you were to use that non-kosher pot, okay, you really have to kosher it now if you want to use it. You have to kosher it. But let's say you made a mistake. Let's say you made a mistake and you used a non-kosher pot, but it hadn't been used in 24 hours. It was clean and it hadn't been used in 24 hours. So then it's not going to trafe up anything that's made in it, believe it or not. Okay, I don't want to get too far afield with that. And obviously you shouldn't use a non-kosher pot. You shouldn't use a milchik pot for fleishik food, of course. However, if it's a clean pot and the pot hasn't been used in a while, the food will usually be kosher because it's called nosein tam lifkam. Leaving that aside, let's get into, and that's, by the way, if you use let's say the common case, right? Common case, not common, but it happens where you have chicken soup or you have a cholent pot, and by accident you take a dairy spoon and you put it into the chicken soup, and then you realize, oh my gosh, what did I do? So there's two reasons why you're okay. Number one, because the soup is 60 times the amount of the spoon, of any taste that might have been in the milchik spoon. And since the non-kosher is 1/60th, less than 1/60th of the total amount of the soup overwhelms it, and you can't, halachically speaking, you can't taste the milchik. The second reason why it's okay is if the spoon has not been used in 24 hours, so any taste that's emerging from the spoon is a negative taste. It's from a halachic perspective, it's not going to trafe up the chicken soup. Why am I mentioning that now in the rules of koshering? Because this explains one rule that I'm going to mention in a second. The first step of koshering is that you have to clean the pot or the silverware or the oven. You have to clean it well. That's number one. The second step is that you should not use the pot or the silverware or the sink for 24 hours. The reason for this is what I was explaining before, that usually you need to wait 24 hours because then any taste, any of the chametz taste, any of the non-kosher taste that's drawn out will be a negative taste. And then we're not worried about it going back in. I'm not sure if you ever worried about that, right? Wait a second, if I boil water in a pot, so then the non-kosher taste comes out, but then it's going to go back in. The answer is, there's a couple of reasons why we're not concerned about that, but one of the reasons why we're not concerned about that is because since you waited the 24 hours, any taste is now a negative sour taste from a halachic perspective. If that taste goes back into the pot, you're not going to worry about it. Let's now go back to the steps. The first step is to clean it well. Second step is to wait the 24 hours. The third step is you completely submerge the pot or the pan or the silverware into a bigger pot of boiling water, or put it into a pot of water and then bring the water to a boil, however you want to do it. Be careful, of course, not to burn your hands during this process. And the fourth step is after you've gone through that process, you cleaned it well, you waited 24 hours, you submerge it in boiling water. Then when you carefully remove the items, however you do that, you can figure it out. Either you carefully with tongs remove the item, or you pour out the boiling water carefully, and then you remove the items. The last step of the koshering process is that there's a custom. The custom is to rinse the item that you're koshering in cold water, and that's the final step of koshering. Let's now go into all the different appliances that you have, and these principles and ideas and steps will be applied, each maybe with little tweaks based on the different appliance. Okay, but let me pause and take a look at what's in the chat box. Some sent it to everyone, some sent it to me personally. Okay, so let's see if we can get to the different few questions about countertops, which I will get to shortly. Let's start with all right, since people are concerned about countertops here in the chat box, so let's jump right to countertops. Why not? You don't cook on a countertop, and you're cleaning the countertop, and there's at least and if you wait the 24 hours, you're going to be okay. But there certainly is a stringency to not put food directly on the countertop that you use over the course of the year. One traditional approach, which my mother always did, was to cover the countertop, right? So if you have some type of thick plastic, or you have some type of board that covers the countertop, then you're good to go. If you don't want to cover it, because you have your beautiful kitchen that's been featured in one of the LA magazines or not, but you don't want to cover it, so then if it's a marble countertop, or it's a granite countertop, so then you can use boiling water to kasher the countertop. Can a quartz countertop be kashered? I believe that it can be. I think Caesar stone. I looked into that. I think Caesar stone can be kashered, but I'd like to check to be sure. But most of the stones and the granites and the quartzes, they can be kashered, because remember, you're not cooking in these things. You're not putting hot food directly on the countertop usually, anyway. So I think you could be somewhat lenient, but you should, right? But you cover it or you kasher it, and if it's porcelain or enamel or silestone, so then that should be covered. However, if it's marble, granite, stainless steel, or a quartz, then you can kasher it in two possible ways. But one way to kasher it is through boiling water, where you pour boiling water over the entire surface of the counter. That can get messy. You might need a couple of towels to make sure, to have ready to catch the water. The other way to do it is through a steaming process, and where you have one of these strong steamers. And I spoke to Rabbi Mordechai Willig, who said that it's permitted to do it in this fashion. Other poskim permit it in this fashion, where if it's a strong steamer, and he acknowledged that the best thing to do is to cover it. Second best is to pour boiling water over it. But one way, and this way I've relied on this as well, some years, which is to a hot steamer, which comes out with a strong current of steam, and you go over the entire surface slowly of the countertop by steaming it. So that's considered like iru rotchim. It's like, kind of like pouring the boiling water, over that item. It's not pouring boiling water. It's kind of shooting the steam at it. That's sufficient in kashering the countertop. Corel, I would not kasher Corel, Joan. Let's go now to ovens. The oven, what, you don't have a Pesach oven? No, I'm just kidding. Maybe you do have a Pesach oven, but how do you kasher the oven? So if it's a self-cleaning oven, then you're good. You run it through one self-cleaning cycle. That is considered the highest form of libun. That gets up to a very high degree of heat, and that will kasher the oven. You have to be careful with self-cleaning. People have told me, I think this maybe happened to us. We ran it through the self-cleaning cycle, and it broke the oven. Why would ovens be made with a self-cleaning cycle that breaks the oven? I don't know, but just be aware of the self-cleaning method. But that's certainly more than sufficient when it comes to kashering. Let's say you don't have a self-cleaning mode. But if it does have a self-cleaning mode, you don't even have to wait 24 hours, because that's total libun gomer through fire that completely kashers it. For standard ovens, so then the oven, you should clean the oven thoroughly, or again, have it cleaned by your housekeeper or by somebody that you designate, or if you want to do it yourself. But you clean the oven thoroughly with an oven cleaner like Easy Off. The racks should be removed and cleaned separately. That's the first step. You got to clean it. The second step is that the oven should not be used for 24 hours. The third step is that you set the oven to the highest temperature and you run the oven for an hour. You might tell me, wait a second, Rabbi, you said that if something's not used with water, so then you need libun gomer. It needs to be done through really the application of a high level of intense heat. So, and does 500 degrees or whatever it is that high level of heat? The answer is that an oven is a little more complicated because you're not putting the hot food directly on the grill in an oven, right? You're putting it in a pan, in a tin in the oven, and it's creating steam that causes the problems. And because of that, that's why the poskim say that you could rely on called libun kal or something in the form of hagala, but it's the way you do it is the way I told you, kabolo kach polto. Kabolo kach polto. I know you're going to be dreamy, you're going to be waking up with a sweat, muttering that kabolo kach polto, but means the way something is absorbed, that's the way you extract it. It falls on the counter sometimes, so you pour boiling water on the counter. You use the pot for to boil foods, to use water with foods, right? So you use boiling water to kasher the pot and pan. We'll get back to that in a second in terms of some specifics. But here with the oven, so it's used at the highest temperature of 450, 500, whatever it is. So you put your oven to the highest temperature for an hour, and that kashers the oven. You're good to go. With regards to the microwave, if it's a porcelain wall, I don't think they make those usually that much these days. So then better not to kasher it. If it's a plastic wall, I think it tends to be hard plastic. But if it's a plastic wall, so then that can be kashered, according to the poskim that I mentioned earlier. First step is clean it well. Second step is don't use it for 24 hours. The third step and the key step is you put a styrofoam bowl of water, and you run it for 10 minutes. Be careful when removing the water. I once heard the psak from Rav Shechter that you should then do it a second time where you put the cup or the bowl in a different place, because the whole microwave was kasher the first time, but on the place where the cup is, that area wasn't kashered. Okay, so there are those who say you should be stringent to do it a second time, move the cup to a second spot, fill it again with water. If it's a glass tray, either replace or remove or just cover it very, very well with the saran wrap, and that will be the way that you can use a microwave. The other option is to survive without the microwave for a few days, right? The few days of Chol HaMoed, you can survive without the microwave. But that's the way you could kasher the microwave. Warming drawers, Baruch Hashem, if you have a warming drawer, that's wonderful. But with warming drawers, better to not kasher that and to not use that on Pesach. because the high setting is not really a high heat, and it's best to just close up the warming drawer and not use that for Pesach. Let's move from ovens and microwaves and warming drawers to the stovetop. Glad, Leslie, that you like the steamer. I think the steam from an iron should work, but I have like one of these steamers. If the steam comes out strong from the iron, then that should work. But you have to make sure that it's really comes out with a blast of steam to be able to kasher the countertop. For a conventional gas range, the iron or the metal grates can be kashered. And the way to do that is, so you clean them, wait the 24 hours, and then what you do is you want to
kasher your countertop using a steam iron.
Okay, you want to put the fire on the highest temperature. Let's say you have four burners. I would recommend don't do all four at the same time, because that could just ruin the oven. I heard once. Do two and then two. That's not halachic consideration, it's just a practical consideration. Do two and then two. And what you should do is take a clean pot that hasn't been used in 24 hours. It could even be a chametz tikka pot. You fill it with water, and what that does is it helps contain the heat. And you put that on top of the burner, and then you put the burner on for 12 minutes. Put the fire on for 12 minutes, and that will clean. That will kasher the burners, or the grates. That is right. The grates over the burner. The burners themselves do not need to be kasher. Just clean the burners. But for the grates, that's how you can kasher the grates. You clean, you wait, and then you do that method of putting the fire on the highest temperature for 12 minutes. The area between the burners should be cleaned and covered with aluminum foil or a separate top of some kind. And the same is true with a conventional electric stovetop. You do it the same way, and you turn it on to the highest setting for 10, 12 minutes. The drip pans just need to be cleaned, and the area in the middle should just be covered. One tricky item is if you have one of these glass smooth top ovens. Again, right? Clean, wait the 24 hours, and then you put the burners on for 10 minutes. You get it to a glow. The tricky area, the rest of the area, if you can pour boiling water on it, then do that. If that's going to crack it or ruin it, then don't do that. And I would just recommend place trivets on the area in middle if you want to place any pots down over the course of Pesach. The broiler is more difficult to kasher. What you should do is clean the broiler pan and area, clean the broiler pan and area, and just don't use it on Pesach. Sinks. If it's china or porcelain, it cannot be kasher. You should have an insert. If it's a stainless steel sink, then what you do again is you clean it. You wait the 24 hours. You should not do anything with that sink for the 24 hours. Somebody on before, one of the people I won't say actually asked me this question the last couple of days, so I was able to look into it further also, that you shouldn't use it. You should just kind of make the sink off premises for the 24 hours. It's already been cleaned. You're waiting the 24 hours. And then what you do is you pour boiling water over the entire surface of the sink. After that step of the boiling water, then you spray it from the faucet with cold water, which and that kashers the sink. Good to try to pour hot water, pour boiling water over the faucets for extra measure, to kasher the faucet head itself. With regard to the urn, just since you mentioned that before I forget it, the urn is just used for hot water. The only problem with the urn is the spout. And so clean the spout, make sure it's off limits for 24 hours, and then you pour boiling water over the spout. The spout itself, only because maybe you had some oatmeal and right, you used the hot water for the oatmeal, and then the steam came up. So all you have to do again is just pour the boiling water over the spout the urn, and then you're fine. We covered countertops, dishwashers. Ooh, dishwashers. All right. So if you can survive without the dishwasher for a week, then wonderful. But of course, the dishwasher is one of modern day inventions that makes life easier for us. If it's a porcelain or enamel interior, that cannot be koshered. If it's a stainless steel interior where the walls are stainless steel or the walls are a hard plastic, so then it can be koshered. First, you have to make an effort to clean it as best as possible. Again, you or your delegate should clean it. Try to, the place at the bottom, try your best. Whatever you can get to, try to clean it out. That's always step one, clean it well. The second step is to wait the 24 hours. And the third step is to run it through a full cycle without anything in there. Rav Mordechai Willig suggested to me, he felt run it through 2 cycles. 1 cycle with soap and 1 cycle without soap. Check the racks. If the racks don't look clean, it's sometimes hard to clean those. You may need to get new or special Pesach racks. If it's just a smooth rack and it looks clean, you're fine, and it could be kosher together with the dishwasher. If it seems like maybe it's not clean or there's a lot of cracks in the racks, you might need to consider getting new racks. That's with the dishwasher. Okay. Tablecloths and napkins, just launder those to use. Okay. We don't launder money, but you can launder your tablecloths and napkins, and just use them. You could use those for Pesach. High chair, clean it thoroughly. Cover the tray really well with contact paper. KitchenAid mixers should be stored away with the chametz utensils because it's hard to clean all the different small parts. A refrigerator, clean it thoroughly, and the minig is to line the shelves, right? Cover the shelves. You don't need to move out the refrigerator to get behind the refrigerator. You don't need to take apart the refrigerator. You just right. Yes, underneath the front part at the bottom, clean that as best as you can. Any other crumbs that are on the side of the refrigerator or behind the refrigerator, they're inaccessible, they're inedible, so it's not even probably considered chametz. And again, you rely on that. What's our favorite mechanism, right? If you weren't on mute, you could say, right, it's bittul, that you nullify any crumbs that are behind the refrigerator. Kiddush cups, the minig is to put that into boiling water, because you sometimes wash the Kiddush cups. You sometimes wash the Kiddush cups in, together with the chametz during the year. So Kiddush cups that you want to use for Pesach, you should kosher it and you throw that into a boiling water. Right? You cleaned it, you waited, you threw it in the boiling water, and then you rinsed it in the cold water. Silverware, same idea, right? It's clean, you waited, you threw it into the boiling water for a couple seconds, a few seconds. It's already koshered, and then you rinse it in cold water. You can kosher in stages. This is another difference between immersing in the mikvah and koshering. Remember, we said that with immersing in the mikvah, it's metal or glass. Only metal or glass need to be immersed in a mikvah. Plastic does not need to be put in the mikvah. You buy a new plastic thing, does not need to be immersed. Wood does not need to be immersed. The china does not need to be immersed, but it's metal or glass. Metal's midaraisa, glass is midarabanan. You make a bracha on both, but those are the things that need to be toveld. And with regards to koshering, there's different rules. Then we said, metal can be koshered. Glass, certainly for Pesach, the minig is not to kosher glass for Pesach. Certainly Ashkenazic custom is to be stringent. Sephardim, there's debate about it. But metal can be koshered, wood can be koshered, granite we said can be koshered, but china cannot be. We said that china cannot be koshered. Another difference between mikvah and koshering is, does it need to be all done at once? With regards to mikvah, it needs to all go there into the mikveh at once. Just like when a person goes to the mikveh, right, needs to be full body, without any interpositions, without any chatzitzot. Similar, when the utensil is put into the mikveh, it needs to be immersed at one time, all at once. It needs to be under the water at one time. With regards to kashering, however, this is interesting and important. It could be done in stages. So if you have a long item that needs to be kashered, you could put half in the boiling water, then you turn it around carefully, you put the other half. Or if you have a pot, but it can't all get into the bigger pot at once, you put in part of the pot, then you roll it around, and it can be kashered in stages. By the way, quick shout out, we have kashering this coming Sunday at Beth Jacob. You can bring your pots and pans and silverware and koso to Beth Jacob, and we will make the process very easy for you at kashering here at Beth Jacob. With regards to the pot itself, I think somebody might have asked that. With regards to the pot itself, somebody asked, I think, with regards to the stone. You don't need the stone. You don't need rocks. We don't want to throw rocks. We don't want anyone to get hurt here in the kashering process. What you do is you clean, you wait, and then you fill the pot with water. You bring it to a boil. You fill it all the way to the top. You bring it to a boil, and then the water will spill over. The idea behind the rock is that this way you put a hot rock or something hot inside, and then that splashes the water above it. But I proposed this suggestion to Rabbi Willig, and he thought it was fine. You don't need the rock. You just put the water to the very top, and the water will boil over the sides, and that will be the method to kasher the pot. By the way, for kashering, it doesn't need to be a kosher Pesach pot. Again, most of these silverware, you probably have kosher Pesach silverware, but you might have some, maybe you don't. It's very easy to kasher things, and if you have some items you want to kasher, a clean, Eino ben Yoma means it hasn't been used in 24 hours. Any clean pot that has not been used in 24 hours can be used for kashering. It could be a chametz stika pot, it could be a kosher Pesach pot. As long as it's clean, it hasn't been used in 24 hours, you can use that to kasher your any utensils. I think we covered most of the items that I wanted to cover. Let me check the chat box. Can you kasher the grapes by putting them in the oven when it is self-cleaning? Yes, you absolutely can do that. Sometimes if you have a double oven and you try to self-clean them at the same time, it may break your ovens or blow your fuses. Doing one at a time is much safer. Ronnie, thank you for that helpful tip to make sure to do one at a time. Steamer from the iron, brilliant. Okay, Leslie, glad you like that idea. Make sure the steam is coming out strong. If the area around the burner is stainless steel, do you still have to cover, or can you pour boiling water? You absolutely can pour boiling water, because that's just you're placing something on top of it, right? Or you're not placing anything on top of it. But the areas around that's fine. The area around the burners, you can cover with aluminum foil, or you pour boiling water on it if that's feasible. Steam iron, good. Dishwasher, we spoke about. Corel, best to avoid. Stone in the boiling water, Josh, is not necessary. And here the question was to me, if going away for Pesach and staying in a friend's place while they're away, you both do bedikas chametz in each of the places before you leave, and then again when you arrive at destination. That's right. You do bedikas chametz in your home before you leave, the night before you leave. And then when you arrive at your destination, you should do a bedika there. If you're coming to a hotel, so the room is clean, and everything's been already cleaned, but you should do a bedika the night before Pesach. You arrive there Tuesday, and it's now Tuesday night, and you're all excited to be in Arizona or Orlando, whatever Pesach program you're on, or in Israel, wherever you might be. So you do the bedika of wherever you're staying. If you're with a family, you do the bedika, right, with your friends or family, wherever you're staying for Pesach. Okay, I see there's some new questions here. Let's see. Would it matter with the iron that it is not a constant steam? It would be a push button and wait till hot enough to steam again? Sure, but it needs to be steaming for all the different parts of the counter. You could do this part first, and then you wait a little bit of time and do that part. That's fine. Okay, thank you, Leslie. Why does the door window on microwave need to be covered? I don't think it needs to be. I don't think the door window needs to be covered. The only thing is, you're saying because it's you're saying if the door is glass, because that's the issue. It's the glass. That's interesting. I think then you should put saran wrap on that cover. It makes sense to put saran wrap on that cover. Again, right? Remember I said about the tray, that the tray you either remove or you cover because that's glass, and glass cannot be kashered. So what you do is you cover the the door, and you cover the tray. So this is, hopefully we've made a lot of things a little bit easier, preparing your home and kitchen for Pesach the easy way, or at least the easier way. I know it's a lot of work, and I want to encourage all of you, right? Lefum tzara agra. According to the effort you put in, that's the amount of reward that you get. And as you engage in the effort, I encourage to try to be besimcha. Ivdu es Hashem besimcha, to try to serve Hashem and prepare for the holiday, always besimcha. To remember also that when you prepare for the holiday, when you prepare for anything, so that has religious value. There is religious value to the preparation we put into something, because when you put effort and thought and preparation into something, so that of course enables us to experience it in the best way and the maximalist way possible. And so there's a beautiful Sfat Emet that says that almost as powerful as the mitzvah is, maybe even more powerful than the mitzvah in a certain sense, is the preparation that each of us puts into the mitzvah. So don't go overboard. Don't get carried away. Everything is good. You got this. You got my number, right? You got my cell phone number. You have my email to contact if you have any questions. And the Gemara says that if we do whatever efforts that we take in our observance of the mitzvahs with Hashem, Hashem shows special favor to us in return in a reciprocal way. And so I wish everyone good luck with all your preparations, and try to be besimcha. And in Mirz Hashem, all the effort that you put in, Hashem should give you much reward and favor and blessings for you and your family, and a Chag Kasher V'Sameach. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Shkoach. Yes, Shkoach, great.
Rabbi, if we wanted to watch the recording, how do we do that, please?